So we continue our series on being salt and light, and we heard about that in the message this morning. Great message. Talked a lot about being salt and light, and a lot of crossover with the themes we've been talking about. Jesus' words on the Sermon on the Mount: "You are the salt of the earth. You, Christian, are the light of the world." And so today we're talking about being salt and light in government, in politics. So the way we're going to do it today is we've got a special guest. I'm going to ask him to come up here. Then I'm going to talk a little bit after we just have a brief discussion, and then we're going to have a little bit of a panel discussion. But Jason Anderson is my neighbor. So, yeah. See him as we walk around the neighborhood, and it's good to see him. But he is also a recently official alderman in the city of Brookfield. And, you know, part of what we want to do in the talk today is encourage you to get involved in the political process. There is a long, rich history of Christians doing that, getting involved in the political process. And Jason has another commitment, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to bring him up here and ask him a question or two. And I got a mic here for you, Jason. But the main question I want to ask is, what made you decide? What's the big why on why you decided to run for alderman?
Well, first, thanks for inviting me this morning, Rick. And it's funny that Pastor Peter just walked in, because this will come as a pretty big surprise to him, I'm sure, because I've never actually shared it. But the reason for me getting involved actually spans back about 15 years or so, to the point where just down the hall from here, Christy and I were meeting with Peter for the pre-marriage classes. And I have a Lutheran background, so I was asking some questions about some of the differences here. And one of the questions I had asked was with regard to sponsorship at the time of baptism. And I said it was interesting. I noticed that we don't see godparents involved. And he said, well, the reason is that instead of having a few godparents involved, the congregation as a whole really takes on that responsibility to help ensure a Christian education for the children. And I thought about it for a little bit, and it really resonated with me more than I actually realized, to the point where I still remember this 15 years later, Peter. And that same line of thinking has come back to me a couple of times. A couple of years ago, we started, a few dads and I got involved with BCS to get a soccer team going. That same type of sentiment was in the back of my mind when we were doing it, and it's been fantastic. We just wrapped up our second season, and it's a really great way to get involved with the kids. That same sentiment played out with my reasoning for wanting to get involved with Boys Club, which has also been great. It's another way to give back to the community, help with ensuring Christian education for the children. And it's that exact same thought process that I applied to the more broad Brookfield community, as opposed to just the BCRC community. And I thought that, along with the John F. Kennedy question of ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, I put it more in what can I do for Brookfield. And I'm very opinionated. I have strong beliefs in what I think is right and what I think is wrong. But if I'm not actually willing to do something, if I'm not actually willing to get involved, my opinion is just that. It's an opinion. And if I take action, that's an opportunity for me to really do more for the community. And with that, I thought about it. I didn't have time for it, first of all. So when I was reached out initially a couple of years ago, I did run, and it wound up being a crowded field, and I wasn't elected, and now I was okay with that. A few years later, I was approached again to run, and I thought, it was terrible. I just got COVID. Christy just got COVID. I had cold sweats going, I had a fleece on, and I'm getting phone calls to say, hey, would you be willing to do this? I thought, I barely know my own name right now. This is probably a bad time to make a 4-year commitment if I was elected, but I did it, and I'm glad I did. It's been a good experience. Part of the reason for getting involved was, well, if not me, then who? If it's not me, if it's not one of you, and we have a lot of really talented people in our community. There's no shortage of people here who can get involved and do exactly what I'm doing, and probably do a better job, quite frankly. these same skill sets are being applied all over. The more we can leverage our skills and our abilities, whether it's getting involved with a local government, such as in an aldermanic position like I am involved with, or what Dale's been involved with in the assembly or the state over the past several years, or it's getting involved with the BCS school board, it's the Elmbrook School District. There are so many different ways that we can get involved to have a positive effect on our community. And if we're not doing it, it's going to leave a void. If we don't get involved, if we don't run, if we don't take the time to understand who is involved and vote for people who share our Christian beliefs, that void gets filled by people who don't share our beliefs. And we've seen how this plays out over the past several decades. If you look at not only local and citywide or regional, but across the country, there's been a lack of involvement from Christians and across the board. And we see that in the educational system. You see that in society in general. And Christian way of life is under attack in a lot of ways, and it's on us to get involved to try and protect that the best we can. So what can we do? There are a variety of things we can do. One, just get involved, understand what the election process looks like, what elections are coming up. We just had a recent election. Understanding who the candidates are. You can go online, you can see who's on your ballot in advance. You can do a quick Google search to see, what does that person stand for? It's like looking at a resume. You take a lot of that with a grain of salt, but when you read the responses or if you see debates, you can generally get a feel for whether or not those people represent Christian values or not. If you want to take it a step further, besides just voting yourself, talk with your neighbors. Talk with your family, talk with your friends. Do they know who's involved? Do they know what's going on? Do they know some of the things that are at risk if we have seats fall to people who don't share our Christian beliefs? If you want to go even beyond that, most of these people who are running would be happy to have you get involved, whether it's knocking on neighbors' doors, it's stuffing mailboxes with flyers, it's making phone calls. There are so many different ways you can get involved. You can get involved for one afternoon. You can get involved for a much longer period of time. Whatever it is, just get involved. We have a lot at stake, and it comes back to us to protect the interests of our Christian beliefs. If we're not going to stand up for them, no one else will.
Thank you. Hey, one more quick question. I know we just have a minute. How's it going so far? What's surprised you?
So far, so good. I would say that compared to a lot of other cities and a lot of other municipalities, Brookfield does have a pretty healthy group in place that works fairly well. I say that with knowing that we were just in the news for having some less than desirable things come out where there were some politics at play, which is exactly why I don't like politicians and why I don't like politics for the most part. That said, we had a lot of conversations behind the scenes and I had one-on-one conversations with people to try and approach it from that Christian background and say, why did you do that? What were you hoping to get out of that? Is there perhaps a better way we could have done that? If you had this challenge or issue with me, here's what I would appreciate in the future. And it's those opportunities where we have the ability to express a Christian perspective with our fellow peers, fellow community members, on how we act on a go-forward basis. So there are a lot of one-on-one opportunities like that where we do have an opportunity to get involved. But again, we're very fortunate to be in Brookfield where we do have a healthy process, we have a healthy group working, and we have a lot of people who do share those Christian values. So we have a lot of good things going here that other neighboring communities don't necessarily share.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Let's thank him for his service. All right, just for the sake of time, because we want to get to our panel discussion pretty quick here, I'm gonna go through this quickly. And I think it's important that we just recognize that as we navigate society, navigate the complexities of culture and the culture wars that we see all around us, the role of Christians in government, as Jason just explained, can't be underestimated. We really have to take it seriously. And look, Christians have a rich history history of involvement in government and politics. And I want to just remind us of three things quickly. First, what does the Bible say about the role of government? And you guys know most of this, so I'm not going to go through it in detail, but submit to governing authorities, right? We know that government was instituted by God for the common greater good. That's a biblical principle. And for that very reason, we need to be part of the process, as Jason said, because if we're not bringing our values, the Judeo-Christian ethic, to the table, someone else is bringing their values to the table. Pray for kings and rulers and those in authority. And we hear that, our pastors pray from the pulpit, and hopefully you all pray for those leading us. Be law-abiding citizens. I had a picture. I don't think I have it up here, but I don't. The Star Trek movie with Christopher Pine, where he's a little kid, Kirk is a little kid, and he gets in a spaceship and he takes off, and the space cop is chasing him, and he says, "Citizen, stop," and he doesn't stop. He keeps going, "Citizen, get out." And being a Christian means being a good citizen and obeying the laws. I have a little bit of a lead foot, so I struggle with that. I've seen that rear view mirror picture a few times. Don't speed through Elm Grove. I'm going to warn you right now, because they will get you. Seek justice and defend the oppressed, right? What does the Lord our God demand of you? Right, Micah 6:8. Respect human dignity and rights. It's so important. Promote peace and reconciliation. Live exemplary lives. But don't forget Acts 5:29. Remember what happens in Acts 5? Peter and the apostles are preaching. The high priest and the Sanhedrin gets really, really upset with them. So they throw them in prison. The Lord sends an angel to unlock the prison door and says, "Go, continue preaching." They go out, they start preaching again. And the religious leaders come and say, "What are you doing? We told you not to preach that name." And they said, "We must obey God rather than men." And so anything we say about submission to government is important, but it also has to be balanced with obeying God rather than men. So I think that's something we always need to keep in mind as we talk about our faith in the political process and our obedience to the government, and the need sometimes for peaceful protest. Biblical examples. We got lots of them, right? You know these examples. Nehemiah, we heard from Dave this morning in his sermon about Nehemiah and building the wall and how he led the people against great opposition and provided that strong civic leadership that was needed to get that wall built. We know Joseph, right? Sold into slavery by his brothers, rejects the advances of Potiphar's wife. He's a man of integrity, and yet God promotes him to be second only to Pharaoh in the Egyptian kingdom. And a great example of serving in a pagan government with integrity. We know Daniel, who refused to bow down to idols, refused to stop praying, and yet God watched over him and blessed his service in a pagan society. And then Esther, of course, how can we forget Esther? As she was the queen and just fought for the rights and to protect the Jews in that situation. So there's many biblical examples of people serving in even pagan governments. We look at Paul, the Apostle Paul, and how he used his citizenship in the Roman Empire to promote the gospel, right? So there's lots of biblical examples. There's a rich history. But I think another thing I want to just briefly talk about is a more modern example, and that's William Wilberforce. How many of you have heard of William Wilberforce? Okay, there's a great book called God's Politician. It's a little bit of an older work. There's also a more recent work on his life. But the thing about Wilberforce was he served in the British Parliament for 40 years in the late 1700s and early 1800s. And he was a brilliant politician, and he was teed up to be prime minister. I mean, he was the shoo-in to be prime minister. Well, he didn't become prime minister. William Pitt, during that time, became prime minister. And the primary reason was Wilberforce made it his goal to stop the slave trade politically, to stop the slave trade in the British Empire. And so in 1787, he joined the Society for Effecting the Abolition of the Slave Trade. And these guys wanted to get rid of slavery, but they knew they had to start with the slave trade, because that's where all the money was being made. The commercial interests in England at that time were tremendous, great money being made at the expense of human beings. And so it took him it took him 20 years to get, in 1807, the Slave Trade Act passed. And he did that through politics. I mean, a lot of people were pushing against this. He gave speeches. He hooked up with John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace, who was a slave ship captain who repented, came to Jesus, and he got John Newton to come and give Parliament tours of slave ships, the shackles and the brutality. And because, when people are removed from that, they're just like, hey, it's all about money, right? It's no big deal. But when they saw the brutality of what was happening to human beings, it changed perceptions. He built a coalition, right? He worked tirelessly for 20 years and finally got the abolishment of the slave trade in the British Empire. Then it took another 20-so years to get slavery abolished in 1833 in the British Empire, even before here in the United States. But my point is, we can make a difference, Christian. We're called to be salt and light, and William Wilberforce is a great example. There's many other examples, but what I want to do is take a minute to interview a couple of folks that we've got here, and let's just set that up. We're going to take 1 minute break. You can get a drink, get another donut if you want. And I'm going to ask Ben Fox and Mary Jo Boss to come up, and we'll have a short discussion with them.